both sub 4 big blinds at one point during 9-handed play, so he's got to be thrilled to have navigated his way to 4-handed play with 1.6 million locked up. This is a fun spot. Chip leader out of the way.
Yeah, interesting to see how he navigates here. He doesn't decide. This is, you know, he might be opening all in with some of his range here for sure. Queen 10 offsuit, probably a little bit too weak to take that approach. But now Benny doesn't necessarily feel the need to avoid this confrontation as the player who covers now. I don't know if 10-6 off is going to qualify, but certainly he would have played a lot more hands in that situation than he would want to play against Elliott.
JC has closed that gap magnificently. Now just 5 bigs less than Benny, and well, don't know what the money line was coming into this final table, but I tell you, Don from Canada waking up with kings just 1 seat over. It's really shifted the dynamic at this table, especially with Benny now having the chip leader on his left. And it's just loving life, 194 million, 296 million chips in play. No space for missteps here, Kevin.
Gonna be an interesting one for Adam here for sure. I think some players would consider every option basically. I think knowing how light Elliott's going to be opening on the button, having a suited king, it's a reasonable idea to just say, okay, if you've got one of your inducing hands, like let's run it. I also think calling is totally fine. He's got a suited hand, he's getting a great price.
How about that? Nut flush draw for Adam, middle pair.
Speaking of modern day coolers, I have a feeling we're going to see chips fly here.
With the nut flush draw. Elliott continuing for sub 20% pot with his middle pair.
Elliott's going to be very confident he's not up against an ace here. If Adam has an ace with this chip distribution, he's just so likely to put it all in pre-flop and hope for the fold. So the ace, it's almost like that card's not on the board. The only relevant factor here is that it's a club. So
does check jam and action back on our chip leader. He's going to get a count from the dealer.
13.6.
Just 13.6 million. Maybe somewhat concerned about his kicker problems.
yeah, and Adam's played tight at this final table so far. I know that's certainly giving him some pause, but he does find the correct call.
See everyone on the rail taking a peek over said rail to get a sweat of this one. 2 cards to come. $487,000 ladder between 3rd and 4th. If Elliott can just hold here, be up to over 200 million in chips with 3 left. Ace of diamonds on the turn, pairing the board. Adam looking for a king or a club to stay alive. Just know the rail is going to pop off if Elliott holds here. And he does. 7 of hearts run out. Handshakes all around. And we lose Adam Adler in 4th place in this WPT World Championship. He's going to be going home with 1.6 million. And then there were 3, Kevin.
Yeah, not only 3, but as we pointed out, with JC kind of climbing the ranks during that 4-handed play, it's now Elliott again with all the chips and 2 players who are very close, locked in, vying for 2nd place.
Thank you, finally, thank you.
This is the type of scenario that could go very quickly if Elliott gets the right cards, but also there's just very likely to be a lot of all-in confrontations between Elliott and
Super awesome,
somebody.
something to remember. Very fun, yeah.
Wow.
does $1
One
million
now,
mean anything to
$1
you? Or, you know,
million
like 1
richer.
like 3, I believe, 1.4.
At the start of
I
the
don't know,
play,
what was
just
it?
2 hours into
1.6
this
million.
Nice.
final
What's that like?
table coverage.
I'm just happy that my kid got to see me play on YouTube. It's exciting. It's a fun day at the casino here, so it was nice.
What were your expectations coming into this final table?
I was hoping to get three-handed and had a pretty fair shot to get there. Lost a flip there, and so that's it, you know? Try again next year.
What was the competition like? Do you like this type? What is your feeling on competition at this level?
Yeah, all the guys are great, man. It's super fun to play with them, and it's nice that they let amateurs come in and play the tournament just like me, so it's a good experience.
What prompted you to come out here?
I like coming to the Wynn, man. It's just a beautiful casino to play at, and high-stakes tournaments like this and big fields, and so it's exciting for me to get out and compete a little bit and have a nice time.
What is this? Does this change your thoughts on what you want to do with poker in the future? Like, is this a catalyst for more tournaments? What's going on?
Yeah, I might play a little bit more. I mean, I'm never going to be playing full-time or anything like that. I'll play a couple tournaments a year, and that's it. You know, stay at home mostly with my family and come play cards when I can.
The worst hourly, Kevin.
Looked like some brief confusion among the players about the dead small blind on that hand. That left us with a cutoff, even though we're three-handed.
Yeah,
All
sorry,
back to normal now. And now still three-handed with a big blind ante, so still just as much dead money to fight for. Certainly some of those short stack, open, all-in type opportunities are going to be even more appealing than they were before, because we're only looking at button and small blind here. And it's now 5 million every 3 hands
30?
in blinds. It's a ton to play for.
Tower of chips in front of our chip leader. Yeah, keep going. 110 big blinds, 220 million at big blind 2 mil. Benny down to 20 bigs. JC nursing around 18 if I'm not mistaken.
We'll see if Elliot's still going with the NE2 strategy from the small blind. I don't think he's missed a raise yet. He does decide, oh, and he avoids a big one there. He does decide now that we're three-handed that he doesn't want to play every hand.
That's the first time.
Which is reasonable. That's the right way to think about it, I think. Now we're getting a little more into that winner-take-all type scenario where there's going to be some fighting back for sure.
Very scary stuff.
Talk about timing, JC. With ace queen of spades in the big. First time Elliot's folded in that setup. Elliot's just all business, man, isn't he? I don't think I've heard him say a word over the last couple of days as we got down to 9-handed play. It's just all business, baby. 4.1 million for first. Never a time to be locked in and focused. This is going to be it.
Benny's still playing pretty tight in the big blind. He even looked a little bit like, not so sure if I'm supposed to be playing this tight, but we're going to let you get away with this one. And I'm sure it won't make him feel great to know that he was getting opened into by Queen 6 offsuit.
JC going to come with min on the button. 4 mil, Benny glancing over Elliot. I believe with that, JC has now moved up to second in chips. To see it. Got a funny feeling that next year that 29 million might be pipped. A lot of players that missed this one. JC finds the jam, blind v blind, and well, hello.
Cool.
Let's run it to get us heads up. JC is going to need to find an ace.
Good luck.
And you came into this final table with the overwhelming chip lead. It's the all-in player at risk with 5 to come.
Wheel?
JC asking for a wheel. He did ask for the black 4 earlier on.
A little less confident than the black 4 too.
Biggest spot of both of these players' careers. Wow. Queen, Jack, 10, 2 diamonds. Top set for Benny. JC picking up an additional immediate out. King would give him Broadway. And no drama for this one. Benny turning the full house. Fist bumps on the rail. I think we just saw, was that Chris Brewer coming over to give Benny a fist bump? JC down to 2.5 bigs. Flopping top set, turning a full house, blind v blind. And JC says,
did he look?
I don't think he did.
I'm not sure that he looked.
I don't think he looked.
So I think that answers my question about how he would approach the situation. He knows the 4 million's going in next hand. He says, let's run it.
Just so happens to have woken up
5.3, right?
ace king of clubs. How about that for a blind hand, Kevin?
And it's a pretty interesting spot because, I mean, it's sort of in Benny and Elliot's best interest, both, to knock him out here, collectively. So not surprising to see Benny go with call, kind of allowing Elliot the opportunity to call behind. And Elliot's now faced with an interesting spot. Do I want to isolate this pot? Do I want to essentially put Benny in the blender?
Thank you.
Action on Elliot. JC with the blind jam on the button, just so happens to have woken up with ace king of clubs. Benny
18.5.
flatting out the small, and Elliot does decide to ISO, so cards on their backs. That is rough news for Benny. Potential triple spot for JC. Does have Elliot dominated. Get back up to 9 big blinds. JC hold here. Talk about drama. To his final 2.5 bigs. Wow. Jack 10, 5, 2 spades, 1 club. Elliot finds the 3 outer on the flop, but still 2 cards to come. Needs to dodge the 7 outs twice. Hearts on the turn. Now leaves us 1 card away from our 4th elimination of the day. To get us heads up in this WPT World Championship, it's the Queen of Clubs.
Straight.
Okay, JC, okay.
Thank you.
All right, dude.
Making sure the dealer understands. It's like, I won this one.
Hilarious. He doesn't look amused. That man right there.
And really a painful one for Benny, who called the 5 million there, gets squeezed out of the pot, and now watches his only real opponent, you know, for the 2nd place ladder triple up.
That felt real bad.
More than triple up.
What's that?
Reflecting upon my poor decision.
Which?
The ace 2.
Ace 2? It's fine. Don't always have queens, though.
Yeah.
Have to agree with the players at the table that referring that ace deuce open jam for 20 big blinds seems like clearly the correct play to me.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure how much you have.
Yeah, Benny
tripled
even
up,
said,
so
it's
yeah,
fine, man. I
14.
don't always have pocket queens there, you know.
16?
18 in total, right? With the blind.
No. Right? 12, 14,
Oh, sorry.
16.
It was like 11.
They just want to chip it in from the small. Wow, JC with another spot.
Yeah.
Puts the chips in the middle. Kevin, it's been non-stop action today. Lost track of how many all-ins we've had. JC looking to go back to back. Just hold here. He's nursing a 17
I
big
think I
blind
want to wheel
stack.
this time.
Said he doesn't want to wheel this time. What do you want, JC? Let us know. You've been calling cards.
6, 3, 4, 5 wheel.
Wow. No. Dealer, take a day off. Nut straight for Elliot.
5 of clubs.
Running clubs needed for JC.
Feels rigged.
Asking for the 5-2, so he has a
Can I?
chance at a chop.
Good game.
Queen of spades on the turn. Gonna settle this one. Gonna lose our man JC Musa in third place. Gonna be walking home with $2,095,000 for his efforts.
Okay.
We are now heads up in this WPT World Championship. Not to needle you,
Feels like a needle's coming.
but I don't recall your rail, or Rampage's rail for that fact, in the 25K being quite as rowdy when either of you won a pot.
Well, in fairness, we were playing at 2 a.m.
That's true. That is true.
and the stage was a little smaller.
That's very true.
Don't think we had as much seating. I think we had about 12 chairs on each side of the table.
Going back to earlier on in the festival, that 25K getting 108 runners just to really send the message as to how epic this WPT festival has been. Both players flopping top pair in this limped pot.
And right away you can see the change of pace, right? We're seeing a suited ace limp the button and then ace-7 check in the big blind. Both players kind of recognizing that the pace of play has to change. Benny doesn't really want to be all in pre-flop for 33 big blinds with this hand. Maybe with some offsuit aces, but not with this one. And it will be interesting to see if he decides to check raise this flop or check call. I think both are very viable options.
Looks like he is coming for check raise. 6.5 million to go.
Certainly heads up in any heads up scenario, top pair is a really strong hand. But because this went limp check pre-flop, we start with 6 million in the pot and there's over 60 million behind, over 10 to 1. So I do think we're going to see some caution. Not necessarily just going to see bet all in and snap call it off unless someone improves to 2 pair.
Yeah, the WPT Executive Tour Director, Matt Savage, calling the action for players on the live rail.
Tricky turn spot for sure. I think part of what Benny's going to be thinking about is, okay, if I bet here, I get value from all the draws that just developed on this turn card. But he also doesn't want to overplay his hand. He has no kicker that plays anymore, so he chops with every ace. He does decide just to check. Kind of a similar situation for Elliot, honestly. Like, there's value to be had here, but it's thin.
19 million in the middle. Couple of straights completing on this Queen of Clubs turn. Yeah, reaching for chips. It's just the classic set the price on the turn to knuckle back rivers.
It does look like it for sure. Kind of challenging the idea that Benny would ever check a hand like 2-pair plus on this card. You know, if he had Jack 9, 10-8, King 10, like a lot of these hands probably just keep betting on the queen. It really does look like Benny's either giving up, maybe has a queen, maybe has a weak ace. None of these hands really check raise against this kind of bet, so he's just getting his value. And especially on this river, I'd be surprised to see anything other than a showdown here.
Jack of clubs making it official. They are going to chop this pot up at showdown unless Elliott can get Benny off of a chop after having it knuckled to him on the turn and river.
Definitely the type of play that you don't see as much these days, but some players, when they recognize, okay, you just have an ace here at best, they'll just recognize it's kind of a free roll situation and just put all the chips in or put a big bet in and hope for the good result. If he identifies this as a free roll, it's a pretty cool play. It's very unlikely that Benny check raises a jack on the flop. It has to be Jack 9, probably. Have to think that's what's going through his head right now, is just like, is there ever a situation where my hand's not chopping or winning here?
Does knuckle it back after taking his time. They're going to chop this one up. I like Elliott taking his time there on the river, just really thinking it through.
Totally agree. I think it's very easy to chalk up these situations as standard and just not really give it proper thought, but I mean, there's opportunity to make creative plays in spots like that if you're really confident in your read of the situation. You could just find like an all-in or something.
Sure I had a value bet or not. Making sure that if I had a value bet or not, I could figure it out.
Sounded like an honest answer.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wouldn't be giving too much information away to my table mate when we're playing for 1.3 million, but I do love the honesty of Canada's Elliott Houdon.
Can I have a water, please? Water?
See
Hey,
Benny choosing
Parking lot as
another
well, please.
open raise, and he...
Yeah, bring some, thank you.
Again, it's not clear to me what his button strategy looks like because he's been dealt a couple of pretty good hands on the button already. Still reasonable chance he's doing plenty of limping, but... Pocket fives, definitely good enough for good enough to go for value, and even if he faced a 3-bet, just a really strong pair.
Benny's still out in front of the fives, a bit distracted by the rail by the looks of things. Maybe some friends making it late to the final table. Elliott picking up some equity on the turn in the form of a gut shot. Pocket fives of Benny still good. Those of you just joining us, heads up for the WPT World Championship title. Both these players guaranteed 2.8 million for their efforts. Eventual champion will be walking home with $4,146,000. Career best score for both these players.
This hand here, a really good example, I think, of that passive seeming play that's more common in a heads-up environment. Benny deciding not to c-bet the flop just because he has showdown value. He doesn't necessarily feel there's any advantage in a heads-up raised pot. And Elliott not bluffing with his gut shot just because he wants to play cautiously, right? Like it's not that hard to make a draw. It's not that hard to have a weak hand that might bluff, but it's hard to make a strong hand. So I think wisely choosing not to just throw blind aggression Benny's way just because he's dealt a gut shot, right? He gives one up. It's okay to give up a reasonable number of these pots. Doesn't mean that he's not fighting hard enough, right?
Always always easy to be an armchair critic, if you will, especially from the booth. We can see the whole cards. Yeah, Elliott just opting to wave the white flag with that 9 high. Reminds me of those poker memes that go around every now and then. I'm at bottom of range, I have to bluff. No, not for Elliott.
Going with 7 million out of position. 3.5 big blinds. Definitely looks like a good enough price for Elliott to continue these hands. He has been limping. I think he's limped every opportunity so far, so the plan for sure is to, you know, fold some of those much weaker hands, but queen 6 suited, absolutely good enough to call.
With Benny ISOing from the big to 7 million, we have our first inflated pot of this heads-up match. 16 million out there.
And these are really the most telling types of situations for how these players are going to play their strategy. These are very average holdings for a situation like this. King high has plenty of value here. Queen high backdoor flush draw has plenty of value here. I'm always curious if they're going to go with kind of like the floating approach, or maybe just sacrificing the pot. And it's not a crazy spot to raise either.
Benny continuing for 1/3. As already mentioned, Elliott with the backdoor spades. Position is going to come with the float. 27 million in the middle, king high v queen high. Well, king of hearts on the turn, giving Benny top pair.
Now really the only way Elliott gets into trouble if Benny decides to check, but he is eyeing his stack.
Still a ton of value to be had, right?
Certainly, I think the concern is if we check, not only do we give flush draws a look at a free river, because, you know, just like Elliott floats here with the 3 spades on the flop, he would float with almost any 3 hearts. So you don't want to give those hands a free look, especially Benny not having a heart in his hand. Although it wouldn't shock me to see him check occasionally with a hand like this, and there's just a lot of ways Elliott can bluff when checked too.
Benny firing twice just north of half pot, setting up a very natural river SPR of less than 1. No dice this time, but a nice start to this heads-up match for Benny. Chipping up nicely here. Up to 87 million in chips now. Now it really feels like we've got a heads-up match on our hands. 100 big blinds plays 43. Reducing the gap quite significantly. Started off 3-1 chip deficit.
87. Thank you.
A long old ways to go. Casual 1.3 million heads-up match on a Tuesday evening.
So now we're seeing Benny open raise with a pretty trashy hand, you know, like bottom 20% or so. So it does seem like, at least for this stack depth, his overwhelming strategy is to open raise. Elliott correctly deducing that even Jack 5 offsuit is strong enough to defend in the big blinds. When there's a big blind ante and he's only raising the minimum, we're going to play a lot of hands in the big blind.
10-7 deuce, two-tone. Expect to see Benny continue with... I mean, is Benny just playing a 100% stabbing range on a lot of these ball textures with range?
Yeah, he certainly doesn't have to. I mean, we did even see him check behind on King 6-3, although he had some showdown value there.
Right.
But it wouldn't surprise me at all. Here he has the jack, which is actually some relevant interaction. I mean, for wide ranges, just having 3 to a straight is relevant enough interaction to maybe tip the scales for him to bet the flop there. But I think especially seeing him bet 6 million into 10, I think we'd see him check sometimes as well with weak hands.
Yeah.
3 million 204 million for Elliott. I do apologize, 203 million for Elliott.
Benny definitely looked like he was considering there if his hand was strong enough to raise for value or if he just wants to check. Maybe a little bit concerned about the trap limp eventually coming, right? I mean, this is now 4 or 5 limps in a row. He's thinking, okay, at some point he's going to limp a strong hand. I don't necessarily want to walk into it with a raise.
We seem to be seeing two very different strategies being played on the button. Elliott limping with 100% of hands thus far. Benny playing more aggressively with not only top of range, but we also just saw the bottom parts of Benny's range as Elliott turns an open-ender. There is a card in the deck, Kevin, that would give Benny a full double, one would assume, in the way this hand's played out.
Yeah, this hand that he's floated on the flop, Queen Jack, is deceptively strong on the 8-6 deuce. He's got a lot of clean top pair outs. He's got the clean nut straight draw on the 9 or the 10. And now he's getting into a situation where I have to think he wants to continue this hand, although it will be interesting to see if he decides to play it aggressively, try and maybe fold Elliott off of his like 8x thinner value bets, or if he just calls again, recognizing that he's ahead of most of the bluffs.
Continuing for 80% on this 9 of diamonds turn. A ton of pressure on exactly these types of holdings.
And certainly this might not look like a clear continue to Benny. I mean, the 9 is going to complete a lot of his true draws on the flop, like a lot of his gut shots. So it doesn't exactly look like a card that Elliott's going to play too aggressively, right? It doesn't look like the most advantageous spot to keep bluffing. Elliott, of course, has a perfect hand for it.
And he really taking his time on this turn spot. You can understand why, 1.3 million on the line. The entire poker world watching as well. This one through. All the options on the table for this one, Kevin?
I really do think so, although it certainly feels like, oh, I was tempted to say that he's thought this long. He doesn't look like he wants to fold. Yeah, here comes the check raise.
Benny with the 3.5x check raise. Check called flop. Now check raising turn. 46 million in the middle, action back on Elliott with his open ender.
And this is a nasty spot. I mean, an open-ender is usually too good of a draw and heads up to fold to one raise. But there's the real chance that he's just drawing dead here. Like, he's up against 10-7 for value. He's up against 7-5 for value. There's no guarantee that his draw is live at all. And as you pointed out here, even though Benny's bluffing, half of his outs are a disaster.
Makes the call, Kevin.
Looks like he sees some opportunity to maybe bluff on a diamond, maybe bluff on like a 3 even.
66 million in the middle, and it's the clean 5 of clubs.
And of course, there's the opportunity to make the best straight in a spot where Benny is going to be hard pressed not to bluff.
SPR less than 1. 66 million in the middle. Elliott with the second nuts. Surely Benny hasn't check raise turn to give up rivers as well. But with the 4-liner on board. Wow. Kevin, this could be it. Snap call from Elliott, and we have ourselves a WPT World Championship champion.
Made it straight, it's all over.
And just like that, you hear Matt Savage say that he's made a straight and it's all over. And just like that, Kevin Rabichow, we have ourselves our WPT World Championship champion. It is Canada's Elliott. Holland coming out on top for $4,146,000 from us here in the booth. It's been an absolute pleasure. Catch you guys for the next